Listen carefully. You are not late. You are not behind. And you did not miss anything that was meant for you. If you feel pressure when you see others moving faster, achieving sooner, or being recognized earlier, that pressure is not intuition. It's comparison poisoning your judgment. Timing is not democratic. Growth is not synchronized. And destiny does not operate on group schedules. What you call delay was calibration. What you call isolation was conditioning. What you call loss was subtraction. You are exactly where you should be, because the version of you that existed earlier could not survive what comes next. This message is not for people who want reassurance. It's for those who are being positioned. 1. Your timing is not late. It is precise. Late compared to who? That question alone exposes how fragile the idea of being behind really is. Behind implies a shared finish line, a universal schedule, a race where everyone was supposed to start at the same moment and arrive by the same age. That is not how real life works. That is how insecure people measure themselves when they don't understand process. You were never meant to arrive when others did, because you were never meant to carry what they carry. Different responsibility requires different preparation. Different impact requires different pressure. What looks like delay from the outside is often reinforcement happening, where no one can see it. If you had arrived sooner, you wouldn't have respected what you were given. You would have treated opportunity like entitlement. You would have mistaken access for mastery and momentum for maturity. That's how people ruin their own future while celebrating early wins. If you arrived sooner, you would have been reckless, not because you were careless, but because you hadn't learned restraint yet. Restraint only develops after consequences. Before that, people move fast because they don't understand cost. Speed feels impressive until it destroys something you can't repair. If you arrived sooner, your ego would have taken the lead. Ego always wants credit before competence. It wants visibility before stability. It wants applause before discipline. Ego doesn't ask, "Can I carry this?" It asks, "Will this make me look important?" And that mindset collapses under real responsibility. If you arrived sooner, you would have broken under pressure. Pressure exposes what training hasn't built yet. It magnifies impatience, insecurity, emotional volatility, and weak boundaries. You didn't avoid pressure. You were slowly conditioned so it wouldn't own you when it arrived. Precision timing has nothing to do with speed. Speed impresses people. Precision sustains outcomes. Timing is about alignment, not urgency. When the structure inside you matches the responsibility outside you, things move without friction. You don't have to beg. You don't have to chase. You don't have to explain yourself. That sits how you know it. Sits real. Real doors don't require panic. Real alignment doesn't feel rushed. Real readiness feels calm, even when the stakes are high. Think back honestly. Earlier in your life, you reacted emotionally. You forced situations. You took things personally. You confused desire with direction. If power, influence, or visibility had landed in your hands then, it would have amplified your weaknesses instead of your strengths. What you call delay was time spent stripping away illusion. It was time spent learning patience the hard way. It was time spent discovering that consistency matters more than intensity, and discipline matters more than motivation. Now notice the difference. You pause where you once rushed. You observe where you once reacted. You wait where you once chased. That is not stagnation. That is calibration. The reason things didn't move earlier is because you were still negotiating with comfort. You still needed reassurance. You still needed people to validate your direction. A person like that cannot carry real responsibility without being controlled by it. Timing becomes precise when you stop asking, "Why not now?" and start realizing, "Now wouldn't it have survived me then?" This is the part most people refuse to accept. They want success to arrive early so it can give them confidence. But real confidence is built first, then rewarded. That order cannot be reversed without consequences. You are not late. You were not forgotten. You were not overlooked. You were being shaped into someone who wouldn't self-destruct when momentum finally showed up. And when things begin to move now, they won't feel chaotic. They won't feel overwhelming. They will feel earned, grounded, stable. That is the difference between being early and being ready. 2. Delay was protection, not punishment. You interpreted delay as rejection, because that's how the ego frames anything. It doesn't control. The mind jumps to the same lazy conclusion every time. If it's not happening now, something must be wrong with me. That assumption is not insight. It's insecurity looking for a story. Delay is not punishment. Punishment is corrective pain for disobedience. What you experienced was protection from exposure you were not ready to survive. Most people don't get destroyed by failure. They get destroyed by success. They weren't internally equipped to handle. Early access amplifies flaws. Early recognition feeds ego. Early power magnifies immaturity. That's why so many people rise fast and collapse quietly. Look closely at what delay actually did. It kept you from environments where you would have compromised your values just to stay relevant. It kept you away from people who would have attached themselves to your momentum without caring about your stability. It kept you from responsibilities that would have demanded discipline you hadn't built yet. You think you were being blocked. In reality, you were being filtered. Protection rarely feels comforting. It feels frustrating. It feels like stagnation. It feels like watching others pass you while you're forced to stand still. But stillness is often containment, and containment is necessary before expansion. If you had moved forward earlier, you would have confused approval with alignment. You would have mistaken opportunity for obligation. You would have said yes to things that fed your ego and drained your direction. Delay forced you to sit with yourself without distraction. It removed shortcuts. It exposed your impatience. It showed you how much of your motivation depended on external results instead of internal standards. That exposure was necessary. Before, you wanted progress because it would change how others saw you. Now you want progress because it aligns with who you've become. That shift alone is proof that delay did its job. Protection also came in the form of withheld relationships. Some people were removed before you had leverage, visibility, or resources. That wasn't loss. That was prevention. Had they stayed, their influence would have been stronger. Their expectations would have been heavier. Their presence would have complicated your decisions. You didn't lose them too early. You lost them before they could anchor you to a version of yourself you were meant to outgrow. Delay also taught you discernment. You learned to spot false urgency. You learned that not every open door is an invitation. You learned that just because something is available doesn't mean it's aligned. That knowledge can't be taught intellectually. It's earned through restraint and disappointment. Think about it honestly. The version of you from years ago would have rushed into things just to escape discomfort. You would have accepted conditions you now reject. You would have tolerated disrespect you now see clearly. You would have traded long-term stability for short-term relief. Protection kept you from making irreversible decisions while you were still emotionally negotiable. Now you steer different. You don't panic when things slow down. You don't over-explain yourself. You don't chase clarity from people who benefit from your confusion. That composure didn't appear by accident. It was forged in delay. What feels like being held back is often being held together. What feels like nothing happening is often everything being prepared beneath the surface. Delay wasn't asking you to wait forever. It was asking you to mature fully. And now that you no longer confuse speed with progress, protection with rejection, or stillness with failure, movement becomes safe. Because this time, when the door opens, you won't rush through it just to prove something. You still walk through it knowing why it opened. 3. You were being trained in invisibility. Most people think being unseen means being ignored. That's a shallow interpretation. Invisibility is not neglect, it's conditioning. You were removed from attention because attention would have corrupted your development. When people are seen too early, they start performing instead of becoming. They adjust themselves to applause. They begin optimizing for approval instead of alignment. Their identity becomes reactive, shaped by feedback instead of principle. You were spared from that. You learned how to function without validation. You learned how to keep moving when nobody was clapping. You learned how to stay disciplined without an audience, confirming that you were on the right path. That training is rare and it's uncomfortable by design. Invisibility forces honesty. There is no image to maintain, no reputation to protect, no external pressure to pretend you're stronger than you are. You had to face your inconsistencies in silence. You couldn't hide behind momentum or praise. You had to confront laziness, doubt, fear, and impatience without anyone rescuing you with encouragement. That's where internal authority is built. Most people collapse here. They quit quietly. They tell themselves the opportunity wasn't real. They downgrade their standards so rejection hurts less. You didn't do that. You stayed present, even when nothing external was rewarding you. That SIP's not accidental. That SIP's endurance. Invisibility also taught you discernment. When no one is watching, you find out who you really are. You see what you do when there are no consequences, no recognition, and no rewards. That's the truest measure of character. You learn to show up anyway. You didn't need to announce progress. You didn't need to broadcast effort. You didn't need constant reassurance to continue. That independence matters more than talent. Skill can be learned, confidence can be faked, but the ability to move forward without external reinforcement is what separates people who last from people who peak early and disappear. You were also being protected from comparison. Constant visibility invites constant measurement. Measurement creates anxiety. Anxiety creates distortion. When people compare themselves too much, they stop listening to their own instincts and start copying timelines that don't fit them. Isolation removed that noise. It gave you room to develop your own pace, your own rhythm, your own standards. That's why your growth doesn't look flashy. It looks solid. Now notice something important. You no longer crave attention the way you used to. You don't need to be seen to feel real. You don't confuse silence with failure. That shift is critical. When visibility finally arrives, it won't define you. It won't intoxicate you. It won't control your decisions. You'll use it as a tool, not as a mirror. Invisibility trained you to value substance over appearance. It taught you that progress doesn't need witnesses to be legitimate. It built a version of you that can handle attention without becoming dependent on it. That's why this phase mattered. People who skip invisibility become addicted to being seen. People who endure it become unshakable when they are. You weren't hidden because you were insignificant. You were hidden because you were unfinished, and unfinished things done but belong on display. 4. The loss you suffered was necessary subtraction. You call it loss because you're still measuring it emotionally. In reality, it was subtraction. And subtraction is not cruelty, it's correction. Nothing that was removed could coexist with where you are being taken without slowing you down or pulling you off course. Some people didn't leave because they were bad. They left because they were incompatible with your next level of responsibility. Compatibility isn't about loyalty or history. It's about direction. When direction diverges, friction becomes inevitable. If they stayed, you would have compromised. If they stayed, you would have explained yourself endlessly. If they stayed, you would have shrunk to keep peace. That sits not growth. That sits self-betrayal. Loss exposed something important. You were carrying relationships that required you to remain predictable, available, and emotionally negotiable. They benefited from your old version. They were comfortable with who you were, not who you were becoming. Subtraction removed the anchors. This is the part people resist the most because it feels personal. But growth is structural, not sentimental. Every system that scales removes components that no longer fit, not because they are wrong, but because they cannot handle the pressure of expansion. You didn't lose people at random. You lost alignment. Notice how much lighter you feel now, even if it came with grief. Notice how decisions became clearer. Notice how your energy stopped leaking into maintenance conversations that went nowhere. That clarity didn't come from gaining something new. It came from removing what diluted you. Some relationships ended before you had leverage, success, or stability. That timing was intentional. If they ended later, the damage would have been deeper, expectations would have been higher, guilt would have been heavier, separation would have been messier. Subtraction early is mercy. Subtraction late is trauma. You also learn something else through loss. Not everyone is meant to understand you. That realization frees you from over-explaining. You stop seeking permission to evolve. You stop negotiating your growth to preserve comfort for others. Silence replaces justification. What remains after subtraction is not loneliness, it's precision. Fewer voices, cleaner signals, stronger intuition. You start moving based on alignment instead of approval. This is why you can go back. The people who were removed served a purpose. They showed you who you were when you were still becoming, but they are not equipped to walk with who you are now. That doesn't make them villains. It makes the separation necessary. Subtraction didn't set empty your life. It reorganized it. And what survives subtraction is what can scale with you. That sips why this loss wasn't accidental. It was architecture. 5. You had to break first to lead properly. Unbroken people don't lead well. They dominate, posture, and perform. They confuse confidence with control and authority with volume. Because they've never been humbled by consequence, they assume their perspective is complete. You didn't get that luxury. You had to break because certainty was your weakness. You trusted your own judgment too early. You believed effort alone was enough. You assumed intention would protect you from outcome. Breaking corrected those assumptions. Breakage forces recalibration. When things collapse, you stop overestimating yourself. You stop treating discipline as optional. You stop believing motivation will always be there. You learn the difference between desire and capacity. You learned restraint because impulse failed you. You learned patience because force stopped working. You learned humility because certainty betrayed you. That transformation cannot be simulated. It cannot be taught. It can only be experienced. Before breaking, you wanted control. After breaking, you want clarity. Before you tried to bend reality to your will. Now you align yourself with reality and move within its limits. That's maturity. Breaking also removed entitlement. You no longer expect results just because you're trying. You understand that effort without structure leaks energy. You understand that consistency outperforms intensity. You understand that leadership is not about being right, but about being reliable. This is where most people quit. When the illusion of competence dies, they retreat. They blame circumstances. They lower standards. They redefine success to avoid responsibility. You didn't do that. You stayed present while your identity dissolved. You let the false version of you die without rushing to replace it. That's rare. Most people rebuild too quickly, using the same flawed foundation. Breaking slowed you down long enough to rebuild correctly. Now you listen more than you speak. You observe before acting. You verify instead of assuming. Those behaviors aren't cautious, they're controlled. You don't need to prove yourself anymore, because proof comes from consistency. You don't need to dominate space, because authority is internal. You don't need to be loud because precision doesn't announce itself. Breaking also sharpened your empathy. You understand fragility because you've experienced it. You recognize limits because you've hit them. That makes your leadership measured, not reckless. You don't push people past their capacity just to feel powerful. You respect process because you know what skipping it costs. The person you were before the break would not have been trusted with what's coming. They would have mishandled it. Not out of malice, but out of immaturity. The person you are now moves differently. Breaking didn't disqualify you. It qualified you. It stripped arrogance, forced discipline, and replaced certainty with awareness. That's the kind of leader who doesn't implode under pressure. You didn't break to be humbled. You broke to be accurate. And accuracy is what holds everything together when pressure rises. 6. Readiness is internal, not circumstantial. You keep telling yourself you're waiting for the right moment. Better timing, more resources, clearer signs. That's not wisdom. That's avoidance, dressed up as patience. External conditions are never stable. If readiness depended on circumstances, no one would ever move. There will always be uncertainty, resistance, and incomplete information. Waiting for everything to line up is how people stay stuck while calling it strategy. Readiness is not about what you have. It's about what no longer controls you. You are ready when your emotions stop hijacking your decisions. When discomfort doesn't knock you off course. When pressure no longer forces you to compromise your values. That's internal stability. And it matters more than any external advantage. Look at the evidence. Not your fear. You don't react the way you used to. You don't chase validation the way you used to. You don't collapse when plans change. Those shifts are structural. They mean your nervous system can now handle stress without defaulting to panic or avoidance. That is readiness in its purest form. Before, uncertainty paralyzed you because you needed reassurance. You needed guarantees. You needed someone or something to confirm you were safe before you moved. That dependency is gone. Now you can act without emotional permission. That's dangerous for comfort, but essential for progress. Readiness also means your standards no longer change under pressure. You don't abandon discipline when motivation drops. You don't negotiate principles when it becomes inconvenient. You don't betray long-term alignment for short-term relief. Most people fail here. They claim readiness when things feel good, but fold when friction appears. You learned to hold your line even when nothing was rewarding you. That consistency is what opens doors. Notice something else. You no longer need clarity before action. You move with partial information, trusting your ability to adapt instead of demanding certainty. That's not recklessness, that's competence. Competence doesn't wait for comfort. If opportunity had shown up earlier, you would have wasted it trying to stabilize emotionally. Now your emotional state doesn't dictate your execution. You can stay calm while things are unresolved. You can keep moving while the outcome is unclear. That's what makes you ready. Readiness is when you stop asking, "Am I prepared?" and start realizing, "I can handle what happens next." You don't need better circumstances. You need to trust the stability you built. And that stability is already there. That's why movement feels inevitable now. 7. This is the entry point, not the finish line. If you think readiness means rest, you're misunderstanding the moment. Being ready doesn't mean the work is over. It means the real work can finally begin. What comes next will demand more precision, not less, more restraint, not more confidence, more consistency, not more intensity. Readiness doesn't soften pressure, it sharpens responsibility. Before, mistakes were survivable because expectations were low. Now outcomes matter. Decisions carry weight. Consequences are immediate. That's the trade-off no one talks about. You don't get to hide behind potential anymore. This is not the phase where you announce yourself. It's the phase where execution becomes visible. Quiet discipline replaces internal struggle. You're no longer fighting confusion. You're managing impact. That shift requires maturity. You don't rush now because rushing creates errors. You don't overcommit because focus is leverage. You don't react emotionally because reaction weakens authority. This is where many people sabotage themselves. They mistake readiness for arrival and loosen their standards. They talk more, they post more, they seek validation again, and momentum collapses under ego. You can afford that. You are entering a phase where what you do consistently matters more than what you feel occasionally. Motivation becomes irrelevant. Systems matter, structure matters, recovery matters. This is where discipline turns into identity. Also understand this clearly. Not everyone will understand your next moves. Some people will misinterpret your silence as arrogance. Others will question your pace. That doesn't require explanation. Alignment doesn't negotiate. You don't owe clarity to anyone who isn't carrying responsibility with you. This entry point demands restraint under attention, patience under opportunity, and humility under progress. The pressure doesn't test your talent anymore. It tests your character. That's why everything before this mattered. You were stripped of illusions. You were trained without applause. You were broken and rebuilt correctly. Now you can hold momentum without being owned by it. The finish line doesn't exist here. There is only the next level of responsibility, the next refinement, the next standard to uphold. Growth doesn't celebrate. It continues. So move forward without announcing. Execute without explaining. Let results speak without commentary. You are not late. You are not early. You are exactly where you should be. At the point where readiness meets responsibility, everything that slowed you down was shaping you. Every pause was alignment. Every closed door was protection. You were never being punished, forgotten, or delayed. You were being built in a way that would not collapse under what comes next. You don't need to prove anything now. You don't need to rush to make up for lost time. Time didn't take anything from you. It refined you. You are standing here because you can carry responsibility without ego, pressure without panic, and progress without self-destruction. That's not luck. That's preparation completed. So stop measuring yourself against timelines that were never yours. Stop revisiting phases that already did their work. This is not the moment for doubt or announcement. It's the moment for steady execution. You are not late. You are not behind. You are exactly where you should be, and ready to move forward without breaking.